Okay. Oh, we're live. Let's see here. I think we're on 6:31. We're about a minute late here. I hope people are getting notifications. We'll wait a minute and see who hops on. And, oh, okay, just notified people. Good. Oh, we got one person on. Is it you that's on?
Not yet. I'm sorry. No, I'm on.
Hope people are getting notifications.
You're good.
Okay. Oh, we got people on. Hi, everybody. Okay, is that going to echo back to me?
Oh, yeah. I usually need it.
That's my friend Tricia helping me. She helps me every week do this. Hi, everybody. I'm Sheri Grunska with Barn Management, and we have a great webinar tonight. I'm super excited about this one because I think this is one of the most important things we're going to talk about when it comes to running a horse business. And so I want to welcome you all to the show. And I just want to tell you can find me on Facebook under Barn Management, or you can go to probarnmanagement.com. I have podcasts, I have blogs, and I have my books on there. I do consultation, and I'll talk to you about what's going on in your horse boarding stable. So check it out, www.probarnmanagement.com. And if you have a question, bring it on in. We're going to be talking about special services tonight. And what do you charge for? What do you not charge for? Figuring it all out so you're not losing money. You can text me at 920-205-7518. Or you can just type it in the little thing and Tricia will pick it up. Because it's hard for me to see some of the stuff when I'm talking to the camera. So she's helping me. Anyways, welcome aboard. I had a couple people email me and say, would I give my backstory a little bit about our barn, the size of it? Did we build? Did we buy a place already? So I'm going to just tell you real quickly a little bit about me and my husband, David. So I'm originally from California, San Fernando Valley, and I am an original Valley girl from the 80s. And I met David, and we were married in 1990 and moved here to Wisconsin. I had horses out there, and then when I moved here, I had gotten a job at a stable the first year I was here, and kind of went from there. We started having a family a few years later, and we decided we had gotten our girls a couple ponies, and it's kind of true when they say if you have a little bit of land and you have a couple horses, pretty soon someone hears that you have horses and they'll ask if they can board a horse or two. And we ended up boarding a couple friends' horses, and that was as far as it went until one day my husband and I were talking in the barn, and he said, you know, it'd be really fun to start our own business, board horses, and then he could stay home, I could stay home, and life would just be perfect. So that's what we did. It was 2003 when we kind of went on this venture. It might have even been 2002. It took about 2 years to get everything to where we could actually build, and it was a long process. We built in 2005. We had a couple huge setbacks during that year with a builder, and we had to let a builder go, hire a new builder, and with that, everything became much more expensive for the subcontractors. So we'd already gotten ourselves kind of in a financial mess. But anyways, the barn was done in 2006, and in June. We opened in July, and we built a I think it's about almost 26,000 square foot barn. We have 27 horses in there, housed in the barn, and then we have an 80 by 200 riding arena, which is my favorite part. And we have 2 tack rooms, a lounge, heated lounge, bathroom, and all that kind of good stuff. And then we have storage in the back for hay and bedding and stuff. So that's kind of our backstory. We didn't buy a place that was already built. We actually built it, and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so that's why I decided to write my first book, because we had made so many mistakes, and I felt like I was really alone. I felt like there was no one else out there that knew what I was going through. And I thought, I can't be the only dumb person to board horses and get this wrong in the beginning. And the one thing I am is I'm very determined. And if I make a mistake or something's not working, I'm bound to find out how to do it better. And we also didn't want to lose our farm. We had a lot on the line. We have a huge loan on this property from the building, and we didn't want to lose the farm. So we really had to dig down deep. And so yes, we built our barn, and that's why I write about it, because at the beginning I just kind of went into it blindly. I knew the horse part of it, but I didn't understand the business part of it at all. And that's where people get really messed up, and that's where I got messed up. So now I help others so that you can be successful and not get in the financial mess that so many people get into with these boarding stables. So on that, if you have questions, bring it on in. The subject tonight is services, special services, and how do you know what to charge for when you're boarding horses, and how do you know what to include in the board. And I want to start off by saying that as a boarding stable, amenities and services are two different things. So for example, our riding arena, our indoor riding arena, is an amenity. It adds value to our place. It helps bring in boarders if they want a winter place to ride. And so that is an amenity, just like your obstacle courses, your jump courses, you know, maybe even trails on your property. All those are amenities. The bathroom could be a huge amenity to women especially, but services are really super important. And people go into it just like us. They get into it. They feel they can offer the world and say yes, yes, yes to everything, and then they realize, oh, I'm losing money on this, 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 and we're going to figure this all out. I'm going to talk to you about it and kind of try to hone in on some key areas that I think are really important to think about so that you don't get yourself in a bind. And you have to remember above all else that every stable is different. So don't get caught up on what other barns offer. And I'm going to tell you some stories with us. Don't get caught up on what the barn down the road offers or what they give for services, because it's much bigger than that. You have to do what's right for you. For an example, when we first opened, we were told to add on our sales tax on the outside of our board rate. So if our board was $400 a month, we add the sales taxes extra. And there were people that were upset at that because no other barns in the area were doing that. We chose to do what our accountant told us to do, and it really worked out better in the long run. But that's a quick example of don't follow what everybody else is doing. Follow what you want to do. Okay, so we're going to dig right into this. And I hope this helps you, because it really is probably one of the most important parts of running your business and doing it right. And I want to start off by saying, when you are going to offer full board, you have to decide what full board is. So usually, full board, in most cases, it's going to include hay. It's going to include water, making sure the horses have water all the time. It could be cleaning their stalls every day. The bedding is included. Turnout would be included. Those are all things that would be kind of your full board. Now, you could go to a stable, a high-end stable, where full board includes them getting your horse out, grooming your horse, picking their feet, even some places maybe saddling the horse out for you, so when you get there, the horse is ready to go. You get to decide what you want for full board and what that means. And we're going to look at some of the real basics, but they're super important, and you're going to be dealing with all this. So everyone I'm going to talk about, I guarantee you, if you're going to board horses, you're going to deal with it. So the thing about it is, for normal provisions, what you offer for normal provisions in your board, that is part of the board. Everything else would be considered extra services. So make sure you get that right. And it's going to change. If you're a brand new boarding operation, I guarantee you what you offer today it will change down the road in probably 1 to 2 years. Maybe not a lot. It could change a lot, but I'm just telling you, you will change things as your life circumstances change, as you realize the workload has changed. And we did a lot of changing, and so I want you to be aware that everything that you offer for your board, the normal stuff, that is part of your board. When someone comes up and they ask you for something completely different or something a little extra, and we're going to break this down, that is a special service. And how do you know when to charge and when not to? So we're going to talk about some of these things. Okay, so I talked about your normal provisions, your hay, your water, your cleaning stalls and paddocks, your daily turnout, and things can get really complicated with that if you let it. And there's going to be some deviations in each of those 4 things at your boarding stable, and we're going to talk about that. So for instance, hay. At our stable, and we have now we have a few less horses, so we have about 34 horses at our barn. I will give a horse unlimited hay depending on what they need. So I don't charge extra for hay. And if someone has a young horse or a horse that's being worked a lot and they've lost a few pounds, they need to up their hay, then I don't charge them for that. As long as the horse is eating it, I have no problem with that at all. If you don't want to do that and you're financially in a position where you need to count every penny with hay and you want to charge for hay, then your extra service would be, let's say that you give the horse 3 flakes of hay and they want the horse to have 4 flakes, or they want the horse to have some alfalfa and some grass. They want to mix it up. Those are all special services. How are you going to deal with that, and do you want to deal with it, and are you going to charge for that? I look at hay as it balances out, because we have a lot of huge horses at our barn, and we also have some ponies, and we have some smaller horses. So we have horses that don't eat a lot of hay, and then we have horses that eat a lot, and it always has balanced out. But if you have a barn where you have all warm bloods, you have some drafts, maybe horses that are going to just eat a lot more, or they're always working, they're always they're being used for high energy athletic competition, and you're going to go through more, then you better figure that part out, because you could lose a lot of money in hay, and hay is going to be one of your most expensive things, probably your most expensive thing next to your mortgage. So just think of that. And water, we have well water, so we don't have to pay for water. It's kind of a weird thing to have to say, but if you have to pay for water, then you need to figure this out, what your expenses are for water. So here, our water doesn't cost anything, thank you Lord on that one. But if you live in the city and you have a stable in the city and you're hooked into the city and you're paying for water, it can add up really fast. I've never known anyone to charge for extra for water, but you need to think about that, and you need to get a real good grasp on what that normal provision is going to cost you each month, because as a business owner, you shouldn't be losing money because of that. You still need to make a profit. You need to cover the bills on that. Another very normal part of boarding horses is the cleaning the stalls and the paddocks. And this, I've seen it done all different ways. For example, we clean 6 days a week. We don't clean on Sundays, and we only clean once a day. There are barns that clean twice a day. If someone's coming for a tour and they want to board at your barn and you only clean once a day, and they say, I would like my stall cleaned morning and afternoon, that afternoon is a special service. Are you going to do it for free, or are you going to charge for them? I would recommend charging it. It is over and above what you give for normal board. Now, there is one barn I know of that they don't clean on Sundays, but they will charge a fee. If you want your stall cleaned on Sundays, they'll charge a fee and they'll make sure the stall is clean. And that's a great thing to do, and it's okay to do it. There are barns that clean 7 days a week. So I want you to really think about that part of it, because the labor itself is going to be expensive. And you're going to get tired if you're doing it 7 days a week. So you're going to have to hire out, so that costs money. And the bedding, all that is going to cost you extra. So just think about how you want to do that part of it. And the thing is, with every barn owner, it's different, because depending on what your mortgage is, what your profit is coming in, can you give some perks where you do some of these extras for free? You're going to navigate that, and I'm going to tell you, I think it takes a year or two to figure out what you can offer and what you can't for free. Perfect example for us is when we first opened, I charged electric fee for fans, to have fans on the stalls in the summer, and I was envisioning that the electric bill was going to just spin. You know, I thought it was just going to be super expensive, the meter, because when we do heater buckets in the winter, our heat bill just goes right up through the roof. And I didn't realize until after that first summer that having fans on is really not expensive at all. We have 27 fans going. That's a lot of fans going in the barn. And it was really not even an issue. So I just got rid of that fee, and that is part of our board, is the fans are all part of it. It's not an extra fee. And the heater buckets, we supply the heater bucket, and we also cover the cost of having them plugged in. And so I have that figured out into my board, in the board cost. So I guess those are some of the little things that are normal provisions that you want to just think about. There's going to be deviations in every one of them, and you have to see what works for you. And of course, the more horses you have, the more expensive it's going to get. So just think of that when you're doing it. Now, one of the biggest things, and everybody has a different thought about this, is grain. And it is probably the majority of stables will include up to so many pounds of grain a day. And when we first opened in 2005, 2006, I did what everybody else did. I offered up to 4 pounds of grain a day, and didn't think anything of it. I had no clue how much that grain was going to cost me when the prices fluctuated. And you're going to have clients where if something is included in the board, they're going to want to use every bit of it. So even if their horse doesn't need all that grain, oh, it's included in the board. I want my horse to have 2 pounds in the morning and 2 pounds at night. And then you'll have people that won't use it. And this was a huge awakening for me when I realized that I was spending out, $500 a month in grain. And I had to look at the big picture, because grain was going up a lot back then. And what started off as a $9 bag of grain went up to $19 a bag. How do you handle that when you have one price for board and the grain's included? And I wanted to know exactly where my money was going, so I made a change like 2 years into our business, and we no longer included grain as part of the board. And I can remember someone telling me that we were going to lose a lot of boarders because we were the only stable that didn't include the grain, and we did it as an extra thing. And back then, if I remember right, we only lost one person because of that, and they went to another barn. Now the thing is, you can include grain in your board. You can include it, but you better know how much money is being spent on grain, because do you have enough cushion so that you're not losing money? And I'll give you a perfect example. Trish, I forgot to get that. Can you give me that clipboard right there? And so I'm going to give you a little example here. So we have 3 types of grain: Strategy, Healthy Edge, and a senior grain. And just for 5 pounds of senior a day, so a horse that gets 2.5 pounds morning and 2.5 pounds in the evening, that person pays me, $60+ a month for that grain. Now that's not coming out of my pocket. That is something they have to cover. But in the beginning, I didn't know how to do that. And, I was easily losing 40. If you have 4 pounds of grain a day, you could easily be losing $40 a month. Can you handle that with 27 horses or 10 horses or 15? It's a lot. You're talking hundreds of dollars, and over the course of a year it becomes thousands. So you can include it if you really have a good idea of what you're spending on grain, but I wanted my life to be really simple, as simple as it could be having this kind of business. So I decided to make it an a la carte kind of thing. And I separated the grain out, and I offered 3 types of grain, and I would have the grain delivered. They wouldn't have to worry about anything, and I would just charge them exactly what their horse uses. I don't make money off of it, but I do get a discount on the grain, so it works out really nice. They save a little bit of money, and they can do what they want. If they want to bring their own grain, they can bring their own grain and supplements, and that works out good too, and I'll feed it. But it made my life really easy. I know I'm not losing this money that I had no idea if I was losing $40 or $60 or $20. I had no idea. It was just too gray for me, and I'm kind of one of those people that need clear lines. Okay, you spent $600 on grain this month, and when you got collected all the board, you knew that that was covered by all the board people who had paid for grain. It's very easy. It's super. It's just very structured, and it works very well. It's very true. You're going to get true numbers, and so that's important. Now, if you want to offer that as your board, then you need to look at what each horse is going to have and eat, and you've got to say, okay, can I, with my board being $400 a month, if they're going to eat $40 worth of grain a month, can we handle that? Can my pocketbook handle that? And if not, then make it a special service. Make it something you offer on the side. I guarantee you it'll save you money and headaches. And will it be popular? Of course not. You know, there'll be people that don't like that you do that. But if you have a really well-run place and care is number one, people are going to be happy, and they're going to like that you're doing that. It really does work. And I haven't had people leave since then. You know, it's just the way we've done it. We've done it that way for years. And you have to look at it kind of like if you go buy a car and you buy a car with all these bells and whistles, the car dealer may say, oh yeah, this is included, and it all sounds really great, but someone's paying for that. They don't just give away free stuff, otherwise the car dealer would go out of business. It's the same thing with you. You can say, oh, we include grain into the border. It sounds really good, but if 2 years later you're closing shop because you're losing so much money and you don't know how to fix all that, it does no one any good. Absolutely no one any good. So be smart when it comes to that, and it's a business, and it's okay. Okay. Any questions?
We have one.
Okay.
Does anyone include a ration balancer and ask boarders to pay for or supply their own grain above and beyond? Most of her easy boarders or easy keepers need a balancer more than they truly need grain.
You can do that if you want. That's the nice thing about being the barn owner is if you want to supply that or you want to have it as extra, you can set it up however you want. So we offer Equishine. It's a vitamin here, and I charge so much a month to offer it to horses for people who want it for their horse, and that way they don't have to go get it. But we do have horses that are on a ration balancer, and they just they bring it themselves. I have the tubs that they go in, and they bring it. I dump it and I feed it, and then I let them know when they're getting low. I don't offer it, but you can offer it. You can offer it. We have a co-op that delivers all our grain here, and I definitely could expand it and say I'm going to offer this and this and this and this. I just haven't done it. I just choose 3 different kinds that seem to be a good mix for our stable. But yeah, as the barn owner, you can do whatever you want, and you just have to get people on track, because when you're making changes like that, if you haven't done it before and you're going to do it now, you're going to have some people that don't like it. And it was a huge change when we did it. But then when new people come in now, they just know this is how we do it. We don't include grain. It is an extra fee. and it's just part of how we do it. And I have not had anyone say, well, I'm not coming there because of that, because out of the whole picture of owning a horse, that is such a small part compared to everything else that is so important in the horse's care. So you can do however you want on that. So I hope that answers the question. Okay. If you have a question about grain, please ask, because grain always seems to be something where people are losing a lot of money. So I just want you to really think about it. Okay, one of the big things that I think people run into as far as problems has to do with daily turnout and how they want to set that up as a special service. And it could be private turnout, it could be night turnout, it could be turnout just for an hour, turnout for 2 hours, horse in the morning, the horse goes out at noon and comes in at 4. There's a lot of different ways to set this up. And seriously, your life can get totally nuts. And to kind of give you a little backstory on that one, when we first opened, I had no clue all the different requests I would get for these special services. And I had one person who came here with 2 horses, and they wanted, in the summer months, they wanted their horses out all night long. So we have horses stalls in our barn, and normally the horses go out in the morning and they come in at like 5 o'clock. They wanted their horses out all night long, which meant I had not thought this through, and I was right away saying, yeah, we could do that, because I'm trying to please everybody. So she owned 2 horses, and the horses were going to be left out. And I didn't realize, because I had not experienced it, what a nightmare it became really quick in a matter of 2 days. We kept those 2 horses out, all the other horses came in. Well, first of all, those 2 horses became very agitated because they were the only ones out. The second part about it was I didn't have run-in shelters out there for our horses that are turned out during the day, because if the weather's really bad, we leave them in. And I didn't want shelters out there. I didn't want to put shelters out there and have to deal with that. The third part was, a lot of times we feed outside the night before, or if you go to feed in the morning and you drive the 4-wheeler in, now you have horses in the paddock and you're trying to navigate and feed, and you've got to deal with that, especially when the fence is down. Then the grain, there's always the grain. When you have horses that are loose and they're like on an outdoor board situation, the grain is much more complicated, because if you have one horse getting 2 pounds of grain and one horse getting a 1/4 pound, you might have the horse with a 1/4 pound gobble up his grain, and then if he's the dominant horse, he goes over and pushes the other horse off and he eats their grain. So now he's a porker, and this one's not getting their grain. So it was a lot of things that I hadn't thought about. The horses were upset because they were left outside. All the other horses were in. And David and I really just had to work through all that, and we had to say no to the woman who asked us. And the truth is, she got upset at us because we said yes, and then 2 days later we said no. And that was a service we couldn't offer. So turnout is super, it gets so complicated if you will let it be complicated. And I'm going to tell you another story. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions. Okay. So when you are doing turnout, you have to decide what kind of rules you're going to have for turnout for special services. So for example, you'll have a lot of people that will request private turnout, and where they want their horse with just 1 horse or 2 horses. And do you have enough room for that? And the way I look at private turnout is anything over and above what we do for turnout is a special service. So we charge for it. And because you have to have separate water, it's another paddock you have to feed hay in, another paddock you have to clean, and in the winter you have to make sure that water is not frozen. So we do actually charge more in the winter time for private turnout. If a horse is on the mend, if they've been hurt and they need to be in private turnout, or during the summertime we'll have some people that are doing showing and they don't want their horse nicked up or chances of anybody getting hurt, so they will do private turnout, and we charge for it. I've had people call me and say, Guy, I have a lot of people on private turnout and I'm not charging any extra and it's a lot of work. And it is a lot of work because now you're walking horses all over the place. You've got them on private turnout. You've got one more area you have to feed and clean and water, and it gets kind of complicated. If you're set up for it, great, but a lot of people are not, and just watering the tanks is time consuming, and it's something to think about. So I think it's perfectly okay to charge for private turnout, and we always have, and we haven't had anyone complain about it. It's really smart to have a private turnout area anyway, especially if you have a horse that gets hurt and they're on the mend and they need to be by themselves for a while. And there should be a fee with that because it is a business and it's over and above what you offer. And it's an extra service, it's extra time, and it takes time. So it's just a thought for that.
Another question.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about designing your new boarding stable with a track system?
Okay, now I'm not sure what you mean by track system, but if I'm thinking what it is it where you have the track around the perimeter where the horses kind of walk, and they call it like a natural setting, and they can just walk, and they have stuff they walk over and around, and a tracking thing. Let me know if that's what you mean, because I can't see.
Nothing yet.
Get back to me on that, because that's what I'm thinking of, is the track system. That kind of, what it is instead of like we have 5 paddocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this would be like around all those would be a huge, it might be 30 feet wide.
Yes, that's what she's talking about.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay, awesome. Okay, I had 2 ladies that were going to come to my workshop here at our barn a few years ago, and that's what they wanted to do. And we were talking about it, and I honestly had not heard of it before until they were telling me about it, and then there was a book, I think there's a book that's written about that, and so I was checking into it. And the idea behind it is kind of cool, but the only thing is you have to remember that let me explain what they wanted to do. They wanted to have it be like this natural setting where the horses have to walk around. It may have some rocks here or some logs and all that. The thing is, it's a boarding stable, and you're going to have horses transitioning and coming and going. You might have one horse that's smart that way and can navigate that kind of stuff and tend to get out of trouble, but I found it more of a situation with boarding horses. Our thoroughbred mare probably would have just got herself hurt. She's very reactive if someone's chasing her. I just felt like it was more things for the horse to get hurt on myself. If it's for your own horses, you can do it, but you got to remember, what kind of horses are you dealing with? And if you're dealing with other people's horses and they get hurt, it's not going to be good. I would not do it. I think horses tend to have enough situations to get themselves into in huge paddocks where they just have them and other horses and trying to keep the paddock ground nice. But you also, in those track paddocks, I don't know where you live, but if you live in an area where you have ice, what do you do if there's ice in there and you're trying to get the ice out of there? And I've never done it, and I don't want to say no to it. I'm just going to say, look at what it means to do that if you're boarding other people's horses. I would probably first try your own and see how it works, because some horses can handle that kind of thing just fine, but I know we have several thoroughbreds here. I can't imagine putting them in an area where they have things they have to go around, and if a horse is chasing them, they might not see some of the obstacles, and if a horse, they get going really fast, I just think it could lead to someone getting hurt. So I guess I don't mean to dash your dreams. I would not do it with my thoroughbred. And and I know how she is. So I guess that's my thought on it, but I don't know a whole lot about it, so I don't want to diss it completely. So I hope that helps.
Another question. Do you use or offer slow feeders of any kind?
I don't. We have one horse here who has she has had ulcers for a good part of her life, and so she has a slow feeder bag. And but I don't put them in. We just put the hay right on the ground, and they do just fine. And I keep it pretty simple. I like the horses to eat as natural as possible. A lot of times you'll go to a horse show and you'll put a hay bag in the show, in the stall and stuff. That I totally get all that. But I didn't want to mess around with slow feeders, and we haven't had a problem with it. We feed twice a day. We feed enough hay so that they're eating a good part of the day. And if a horse has a medical issue, like ulcers, something like that, then we'll put a slow feeder in. But that's just me, but a lot of people use them. We've been doing it 15 years and it just has not been needed. We just feed them like normal horses, animals, the way God created them. We just put the hay on the ground and they do just fine. If you're going to do it, I would just, I know some people do it outside and they'll do it with the big round bells and I think it's great. Just be careful. Make sure that you get the kind that, you got to be aware of the horses and they don't get caught on something. I saw a video where the horse's halter got caught on a slow feeder. That was not good. And also a shoe got caught on a slow feeder. I'm not trying again to diss them. All I'm saying is when you are taking care of other people's horses, the responsibility just magnifies greatly. And it's a whole different ball game. It's different if it's your horses and you want to do those, but when you're caring for other people's horses, they get hurt on everything and everything. So I just think, for me, we just don't use them, and we haven't needed to, and it's been fine. So that's just something that we do. Okay.
This is related to the webinars. Are your previous sessions recorded and available somewhere?
They're on here on ProBar Management, and this is only my third one, so I don't have a lot. And I'm going to have them on YouTube and also Rumble. I'll have them on Rumble too. I'm kind of trying to get all that set up. So yes, they're on this Facebook page, ProBar Management, and eventually they'll be on YouTube and they'll be on Rumble. So I hope that helps. Thank you. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, kind of for hay and grain, and the question on the paddock, the kind of racetrack kind of thing. It's a great question. You can do all that. I think if you want to do it, check it out. I'm just saying be aware of the horses you're going to be having come to your place, because horses tend to, especially if you've got 3 or 4 horses in there and they're chasing another horse, they might get a running start, but there might be things that they're trying to navigate around, and I just be careful, just for a safety issue for the horses. Just something to think about. I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade, but I mean it's just keep it simple. Okay, any more on that one?
Nope.
Okay, so. Now we talked, so we were talking about turnout, night turnout. The other thing is you will have people that will ask you if their horse can only go out for an hour a day. You might have people that ask if their horse can stay in the morning for lessons because they have lessons and they want their horse clean before they go out. These are the things you need to think about, because when we first opened, we said yes to everything. And what would happen is I had people that would leave their horse in for a lesson. And the horse ended up being in till 12 noon. Well, the stall's dirtier. The water, I have to keep topping off the water. There's a lot more work involved in it. And do I want to do that? We chose not to do that. So at our barn, the horses all go out unless they're going to a show, or they're lame, they're sick, or they're going trail riding or a clinic. But for regular lessons, they all go outside and the owner has to go out and get them. because otherwise what happens is you'll end up having horses in more often than they are out, especially for some people. And there's a lot more work involved when you have to clean that stall the next day after the horse has been in and only been out for an hour. You can definitely do what you want. I just found it's much less stress in my life to say, keep it very black and white and say, this is how you do it. We'll let people keep their horses in for farrier or vet appointment. And, we don't want the horses' feet on money for the farrier too. So it works out really good. And it's not that I'm trying to be a control freak. I'm just trying to keep my life really simple, because I'm working 7 days a week, and you have to have, it gets so crazy with this many horses, and they are a lot of work, and you're going to be busier than you ever imagined. And time is money. And if I don't do it, then I have to hire someone else to do it, and it just gets very expensive. So that's why we do it the way we do it. And if someone wants their horse in all the time, you could say, well, if your horse is going to be in all the time, if you want to do that, or they only get turned out an hour a day, well, then you could charge them a surcharge for the work and labor that it's going to cost. You could say, well, it's $50 more a month. You can do that. You can do anything you want because it's your barn. So that's why think about these things, because there's work involved when things are offered that are different than what your standard board is and what you've calculated all your work and financial part to it. It all adds up. So I hope that helps. Okay, question?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have a list of barn rules? I think it's time to come up with barn rules, and I feel what I need to say should be common sense, but at the same time, I don't want to sound condescending.
I do have a list of barn rules. I'll show my book right now. Okay, here I go. In my book, a step-by-step guide to starting and running a successful horse boarding business. It's a huge book. I actually have a whole slew list of barn rules and what has worked, what hasn't worked, why we have the rules we have. Every barn is going to have different rules, every single barn. But you have to do what's good for your barn. But I'm going to tell you right now, your barn rules will mean nothing if you don't enforce them. So the easier part will be writing them. The harder part will be enforcing them. And it is hard at first. It'll get easier, and you're going to have to say things to people that you never thought you would, and like, oh, can you pick that up? Da 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 da. But if you get in the habit and you get everyone in the mindset, it gets much easier. So if you want to get a list of what our barn rules were, and I talk in here about why these rules were important for us, and then you're going to add your rules. Check out this book. It's on Amazon and on my website, and it'll talk about each of those. The thing about barn rules are, what you start off with barn rules is going to change. So when we first opened, I really couldn't think of rules because I kept thinking, what could go wrong? And then lots went wrong, and all of a sudden my rules got really long, and then they got even longer. And now, after all these years, it's kind of tapered down, and I don't have some of the problems I used to have anymore because I have a reputation and people know kind of how we do things here. And if I have to send a reminder out, I'll send it via email sometimes and say, hey, we have a little problem here happening. But I don't have a problem talking to someone either, and I try to be very respectful of that. But barn rules are great. They're smart, and they make a business sound. If you don't have them, you'll have chaos, and it just doesn't work. So barn rules are good, and there's nothing wrong with having rules. I don't know why people think rules are bad these days. Rules are good. They're good, aren't they?
Indeed.
They're good. So have some rules. It'll bring it'll give you some sanity.
We have one more question.
Okay.
Do you have mares and geldings separated?
Okay. Mares and geldings separated. We have always had a mixed herd. Ever since we've opened, we've had a mixed herd, and just one usually. But right now we have actually so many geldings and very few mares. And so our mares, we have 4 mares that are together. And then my horses are with a mixed herd. And then we have all the rest are geldings. And it's just kind of it is. People love geldings. And so I don't, you will have boarders that will absolutely be upset if you put their mare with a gelding. I think when you mix a herd, you have to really know what you're doing, and part of it is just really learning horse behavior. Some of the hardest, most difficult horses to put in together with the opposite sex would be, I think, sometimes if you get a gelding who was a breeding stallion for years, once he gets gelded later, sometimes it's hard to have him near mares. Some mares are really marish, and geez, they can't even be around any guys. I mean, they just like, and and then some of them do great. I actually have a gelding and a mare that are together all the time, and they do great because the mare is really mellow and calm, and the gelding just is always calm, doesn't act skittish at all. So it depends on the horses, a lot depends on the horses, and you kind of have to really know a little bit about what you're doing. And I had to learn too. I had to learn to really read them and know when this wasn't going to be a good fit and when it was going to be a good fit. And some mares and geldings do fabulous together. And so I'm not super strict on that. But I've never had more than one paddock at a time that was a mixed herd, and that's all I have now. It's just one paddock that's a mixed herd. All the rest are all mostly geldings. We have a lot of geldings here. So, and sometimes you'll have someone come to your place and they'll be upset at that. They won't like that you have a mixed herd. They don't want their horse in a mixed herd, and they may not come, and you have to be ready to say, okay, and let them go. You can't please everybody. And when you start trying to please everybody, that's when people get into trouble. So don't do that. It's better just to say, this is how I do it here, and they have to trust you in what you're doing. And it gets easier with time because you get a reputation that you know what you're doing. And it's hard when you're a brand new business because people, and I did the same thing. People didn't know me, and I had to sell myself, and I also thought I knew more than I did. And it turned out I really didn't know as much as I thought I knew. It took years of learning and dealing with new horses coming in, putting them in herds, figuring them all out, and it was a lot of work. So we're all learning together. Don't get discouraged because I've made mistakes, and I've actually put a horse in with a group of horses and thought it was going to be great, and it did not work out good, and I had to pull the horse out, and that was in maybe a group of geldings. So not always the same sex works either. So I'm open-minded to that, and that's just how I do it. Okay, so let's get back to services offered. I want to talk about a few more things because we're already at 48 minutes, so this is going super fast, and we missed a lot of stuff. Okay, one of the biggest things, and I had a couple questions on this, so I want to talk about this for a few minutes, is blanketing. Do you charge for blanketing or not? I'm going to tell you right now, blanketing is one of the most time-consuming things you will be doing, and you need to really figure out how you want to do this. First of all, if you have a heated barn, you're going to have more blanketing than a barn like ours where it's not heated, so it's cold. The temperature isn't as big of a difference from inside the barn to outside. Blanketing is something that some barns, I've had barn owners call me, and after a year they're burnt out because of the blanketing, because they're switching. You might have a lightweight, midweight, heavyweight. You might have a horse owner that buys a blanket that has a shell and then a heavier one underneath. Either way, I don't care how you look at it. It's time consuming. It's in the winter, it sucks. If it's muddy, the blankets are wet, the straps are muddy. It's not fun. So at the beginning, like most people, usually you include it, and then you realize how much time you're spending switching blankets, putting on this one, putting that one, hanging this one up, or you're paying someone to do it, and you find out you're losing money. Now, if your board rate is high enough and it can absorb the cost of blanketing, great. But what we chose to do was keep our board rate a little lower because we had quite a few people who didn't blanket. And I felt like, why should they pay a higher board rate for something that they're not going to use? They're paying for things they'll never use. So I made blanketing a separate fee. And the people who want me to blanket their horse, they'll pay for it. And the people who don't, then their board is, everyone's board starts off here. And then the person who wants blanketing, they're going to pay this extra surcharge. Whatever it is, $40 a month, whatever you decide. Or you do it by the time. I often I blanket so little that it's really not a big deal. And if I do, I just charge them per time. So blanketing is huge, and people always start off thinking, oh, we'll just include it in our board. We're going to have it on our website. We do blanketing, and then they realize how time consuming it is, and it's exhausting. And when you're cold and the blanket is wet, or the blanket gets tore, or the strap is missing, it really kind of becomes a pain in the butt. So I charge for it. I think it's a great service to have and to offer, but I think it comes with a fee. And so I have no problem with that. And so that's how we do it there. Do you have a question with that?
Yes. Not on that, but it's different.
Okay. Then before we answer this, if you have any questions about blanketing, let me know. You can include it in your board, but just be aware of how time consuming, especially if you have a lot of horses. I have 27 horses in the barn. If I had to blanket 27 horses, easily another hour onto my time. Who knows, maybe even more. You figure how many minutes does it take to put on a blanket, and the horse is moving around. So that's what I think about blanketing. And you can disagree with me. It's perfectly fine. There'll be people that won't agree with me. But I just found it very time consuming. So that's that. Okay.
Thoughts on boarders bringing their horses in from the pasture before all the other horses come in, or at random times during the day? Do you allow it or charge extra for that horse to be in?
I'm assuming then they're leaving the horse in for the rest of the day. I'm assuming. Okay. Let me know if that's what you mean. Like once they bring the horse in, like let's say the horse came in at noon and they leave the horse in for the rest of the day. I'm assuming that's what you mean. So we kind of had that problem when we first opened. So our horses go out, and they're usually out by like 6:45 in the morning. Sometimes 7 o'clock, but we try to get them out earlier, depending on how fast I'm walking in the morning. And we get them out in the morning, and they normally come in around, they're in by 4:30, 4:45 in the winter, depending on the weather. And so the question is, do we allow people to just come out and bring their horse in at noon and leave the horse in? I don't, because normally that horse gets upset, the stall gets dirty, it just becomes kind of a headache. Now, if they bring the horse in because they're going to ride and they're doing this, or they're waiting for the vet or farrier, I have no problem with all that. And if they come and they're done riding at 3 o'clock, they can leave their horse in. I mean, I don't care about that. But if they only want their horse out for 2 hours a day, so they're going to come and bring the horse in themselves because you won't do it, I don't allow that, because I want the horse out. The horse is happier out. Usually the horses get stressed when they're in, especially if they're in by themselves. And I don't have that problem with it. Now, I think at the beginning I did, when we first opened, I had people that were doing that, and I wasn't sure how to navigate all that. And then finally I just made a rule, and I just said, if it's before, like between, I think I made it like 2 o'clock, turn your horse back out. Let him be a horse. Let him be a horse. And that's what I did. Now, the people I have here, they all want their horses out. I don't have anybody who wants to bring their horse in early. But the mindset was different back then, and I'm not sure, it depends on your clientele. I just want the horses out because it's so much easier, and they get stressed if they're in their stall and everybody else is outside. They start pacing, they're calling, so I just think it's better, I tell people just put them back out, and it works out good. I hope that's what you were asking, you're wondering. The other part I want to talk about real quick, because we're already at 54 minutes, is, okay, two things. Holding fees for vet or farrier. I charge for a holding fee. Now, I know barns that include that in their board, and the barn manager or someone has to hold. Well, when you have 20 horses and you have the farrier coming, you're going to be spending days, here and there, hours, holding these horses, and it's a great service for the boarder, but you're losing money if you're paying someone to do that, and you're going to burn out your staff if your barn manager has to do all that. We will hold for a vet or farrier, but we charge for it, and it's real simple, and it works out good. It's just super easy. The other thing is boots, easy boots, bell boots. You're going to have people ask you to put certain boots on their horses. Some of them are to be determined. My big thing with boots that I found out is when they go out and it's kind of wet or muddy, the boots come in, they're disgusting, the Velcro doesn't stick. Someone's got to clean all that so you can get them on the next day, and who's going to do all that labor? So I'll charge fees for that if I have to do it every day. Easy boots, if you have to have easy boots on a horse, they're great for the horse, but they are hard to put on. You have to make sure they're fitted right. And when the horse comes in, like David, every time we had a horse years ago that had easy boots on, and when we had to pull those off, the liner had to come out of the easy boot, and David would rinse it off, and then we would have to let it dry, and then that all had to go back together for the next day. That was a lot of work, so we charged for it. So just some of those things that you're going to be asked to do, think about the work. And you know what, if you start off saying yes, you may have to, a year down the road, say no. And you may start off saying no, and later on down the road, you may say, you know what, I can do that now. Like fly mask. I think when we first opened, I charged for fly mask to have to put a fly mask on, and I don't anymore. It's easy, I can do it. But in my head, I was envisioning having 40 horses with fly mask, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be out here doing this forever. And it turns out maybe you might get a handful of people that want fly mask on their horse. And so you're going to have to figure out what you can do, what you can offer, and what you want to charge for. And, I do try to, I don't want to nickel and dime my clients, so I do try to do some things and help them out and not charge them. Like I'll give meds in the morning or afternoon, and I don't charge. There's certain things I'll do to try and help them out, but there are some things that I just have to charge for, and you just have to. Otherwise, if it gets magnified, because if you do it for one, you have to do it for everybody. You can't say no to one person and yes to another. And if you have to do it for 20 horses, you will never be in the house. You'll never see your family. You'll never eat dinner because you'll be busy all the time. So you kind of have to figure out what works for your barn. You have a question?
Got more.
Oh, okay.
If boarders bring in their own trainer, do you charge anyone for that? If so, who and how do you determine the rate? And also, how about haul-in fees? So that's 3 questions.
Okay.
In one.
Okay. Any trainer that comes here to our barn, they have to have insurance. If someone wants to bring a trainer in, right? Say that again.
If boarders bring in their own trainer, do you charge anyone for that?
Oh, okay. So I'm probably not the norm in this. I don't think I am the norm in this, but I'll tell you how I do it. We have lots of trainers that come here, and if it's the boarder who is taking lessons, I do not collect anything. All I want is liability insurance from the board. I have to have it from the trainer. Insurance from them, that they have insurance. They cannot train out of my barn without it, because I feel like the boarder is already paying board to be here, and for them to have instruction is really a plus. It's a safety thing. It helps them learn. It helps them grow. I don't think they should be charged for it. That's my own thing. But if a trainer is giving lessons on a lesson horse and they have people trailering in, or they have a lesson horse and people are coming and riding that horse for lessons, then I do charge for that. And yes, I do charge for that. So it just depends on the situation. But for the boarders, excuse me, I don't think they should have to, myself, I just don't think they should have to pay me extra because they're already boarding there. They're already in the arena riding. They're just getting instruction. And that's a good thing. It helps them grow. They learn. It really is a win-win for me too. So I don't charge in that.
Did you talk about Holland fees?
Oh, and Holland fees, I've seen it all different rates all over the place. We don't really do too many Hollands at our barn anymore, but there are some barns in the area that charge, I think, $20 for a Holland fee. And it depends on where you live. I've been down south and they charge $35 for a Holland fee. I think it really depends on where you live in the United States or I guess in the world, what the average is going for. So I don't charge. I don't really do too many Holland fees now. I kind of say no to it anymore. I just don't want to. Once in a while, I'll have someone I know will ask if they can come over, and that's a little different. But it's a little bit more work when someone comes that you don't know, because then you have to explain how everything works and have them look at the barn rules. And I don't want to hassle with it. So I don't do that much. But a lot of barns do Hollands. Have people trailer in and they do great and they don't mind it and it works out good. So you have to decide what you want to do on that.
Okay, another question. Several in one on horse blanketing.
Okay.
Have you tried to institute a general policy about temperatures and when blankets will be put on? Do you blanket your pasture-only horses? And how do you manage client expectations when everyone has a different idea on when a horse needs a blanket versus a turnout sheet versus nothing at all?
Okay. It gets crazy. So I'm going to be really honest with you here. There have been a couple times that I've gotten very upset at clients because I went out there and the horse was foaming under his blanket. This was years ago, and the horse was overheated. The blanket was too heavy. And this was outside. I had one person pull a blanket many years ago on a horse that had no coat at all. It was a show horse because we had a, quote, couple days of warm weather. Well, the temps dropped again and the horse was shivering. So then I had to go get one of my blankets because they took their blankets home because it was springtime. And they thought, oh, it's springtime, the weather's going to get warmer. Well, we can have snow in May. I mean, not, but I mean, it can get cold. And the horses are shedding out. So I try not to get upset. I try now to educate, to teach. But the bottom line is you call it as the barn owner. So most of the time, your clients just need a little educating on the types of blankets, the thickness, what type of horse they have. Do they have a thoroughbred or do they have this woolly pony that doesn't even need a blanket? You can't always control what they're thinking in their mind and what they think because they're cold, they think their horse is cold. Okay, so we've got that established. How do you navigate that? I think this is where you have to have a heart of a teacher and you have to be able to educate. And there are times that it may be time consuming at first, especially with a new horse owner because they don't know. And there are times when you just have to say no. Or you have to say, no, you can't do that. That horse is going to get sick. And to be honest with you, you might have clients that get upset and leave. They go because they want to do it their way, and you have to let them. I haven't had that problem in a long time. But if you get someone that is going to come to your barn and they want you to have this type of blanket on until the temperature is this degree, and then you got to run out there and switch blankets for this one, and then come in and the horse comes in at night, and then you got to switch it down to this one. Your life is going to get absolutely crazy, and I don't want to do that. You have to find a balance in life here. I mean, it just gets nuts. And I know someone who had that problem with the boarder, and, it was like between 42 degrees and 47. Now we got to switch the blanket. You have to have staff. You have to have someone on staff to do that. Well, can you afford to do that as a business? To have someone go out and switch blankets with every temperature change? It can get really crazy. So, I think you have to decide what type of clientele you want and what you can afford, and are they willing to pay for all that service? Because if you're going to be switching blankets in the middle of the day, you have to have someone there to do it. And it just here at our barn, because our barn is cold, we don't have that problem. And people are very good about switching their own blankets, or they'll call me and say, can you pull this or that? But if you start having to switch blankets in the middle of the day, it can get a little nuts. And you have to decide if it's worth it for you to do that. And if you have a client like that. I don't have any clients like that now, and I think people make it much more difficult than what it has to be. The big thing is you don't want the horse sweating, you don't want them overheated, and you don't want them freezing, but there are a lot of great blankets out there that breathe, and you don't have to do all that. And the horses like it a little cooler. They don't want to be hot. I mean, I think we blanket them too warm, and then they are hot. So I don't deal with all that, and I know it sounds. I probably sound a little bit like. I don't know. People probably think, well, she doesn't offer very much at her barn. We do offer a lot, but you have to have a little bit of balance and common sense. These are animals, and they do better than what you think. We can't just put them in, head to toe blankets and, run out there every hour on the hour as the temperatures fluctuate. It just gets nuts. So I don't do all that, and I haven't had a problem with it. I have gone out there, and horses, when I know the temp's going to be rising pretty rapidly, and I may text the owner and say, this is what it's happening. They're going to be too hot in what they have. And once in a while I have to switch a blanket, but it's not very often because they have the proper blankets to begin with. So is that it? Okay. We are at 1:07, and you guys are awesome. We talked about a lot of stuff with special services. If you have other questions, email me. You can email me. Go to probarnmanagement.com. I'll try to answer them. I'll try to have them on the show next Monday night. It's just, all I can say is keep it simple. If you're going to board horses, start off small, keep it simple. Don't make it too complicated, and it's okay to say no, because otherwise you're going to be running back and forth trying to please this person and that person. And pretty soon you'll start to get a reputation, and you'll kind of get the same kind of clientele in your barn where they all kind of agree. Not that everyone's going to agree, but they'll have a lot of similar things on how they believe in horse care, and you'll get a reputation for how you do things. It's great to say yes to your clients, and I try to as much as I can, but you have to have a balance, and it can just get nuts. So keep it simple. I wish you the very best in your boarding business, and if you have any questions, contact me, and God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.